Hello, Gen Genies. It's me, Julie.
And Rich.
Before we get started today, we want to let you in on some exciting news. We have launched our new Patreon page for the podcast.
Woohoo! We are super excited about this new chapter for CutOff Jeans.
So, Patreon is a website where listeners like you can pledge a small monthly amount. We're talking only $5 or $10, guys, to support the podcast and help defray the costs of bringing you the show each week.
To be clear, CutOff Jeans will continue to be absolutely free. But to thank you for your support, we are going to offer our patrons some fun little extras.
Like early access to the podcast every week, where you'll get to hear the latest episode before it's released to the general public.
And why not make your friends jealous with exclusive patron-only CutOff Jeans swag?
Fancy. And here's something you guys have been asking for, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to host a monthly, hour-long, online Ask Me Anything session where patrons at the $10 level can literally ask me anything.
Anything? You're a brave woman, Julie.
You know, I know. I'm also going to give access to my blog, Are You My Father?, where I tell the story of my search, actually it's my life story basically, for my biological father in even more detail than I did on the podcast.
Wow, your blog was the original inspiration for CutOff Jeans, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow. Well, all patrons at any level will receive a shout out on the podcast along with our undying gratitude for your support.
Yep. You guys know that this show is a labor of love for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It'd mean so much to me if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast by going to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
That's Patreon, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
We'll add a link to it on the podcast and on the Facebook page. Thank you all, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Woo!
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip, hip, hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Jeans, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the co-host and producer of this podcast, and a Gen Genie Jr. I haven't said that in a while. I wanted to see if I could.
And you did. Well done.
If I think about it, I'll mess up. But if I just let it come out, it'll work.
And that's really a rule of thumb to live by in life.
It is. It is when I'm playing a piano at a gig and I'm in the middle of a song, and if I start to think, oh my God, how does the bridge go?
I've done that before.
Yeah, and then I get really nervous and I'll screw up. But if I just don't think about it and just go, it'll when it comes, it will come. And it does.
I have done that a few times in the middle of a performance where I sense myself thinking, oh God, what's coming next? And I have to force myself to go in autopilot.
Yeah.
So that it just comes out.
What it really comes down to is trusting your instincts, like just trusting that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But if you question it, it's over.
Never question.
Never question.
More words to live by.
Right? How are you, Julie? What's going on?
I'm fine. I'm semi-relaxed right now.
Oh.
Because I just did a breathing exercise on my Calm app.
You know,
not a sponsor, by the way.
Yeah, not yet. I have that app and I have not used it. And I feel badly because I signed up for it like a month ago or 2 months ago, and I still haven't gotten through
Did you pay for it?
It came with like American Express, like a free year or something.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know, they offered. I said, well, I like to be calm. And then, of course, I'm too nervous to start.
I'm anxious that it's not going to calm me down.
It's causing me anxiety because I haven't started yet.
You know, it's funny that you said that because they have this breathing exercise. And it's like a circle, and like it makes one noise when it goes to, well, you should be inhaling, and then a different noise while you're holding it, and then another noise while you're exhaling. And it was doing really well. And then the leaf blowers outside kept interrupting. And I was like, dang it. And like, this is what takes me out of things.
I want to be a fly on the wall when you're trying to do a breathing exercise and the leaf blower shows up.
Yeah.
So tell me, do you like the Calm app?
I've literally used it for the first time today.
Oh, okay. You'll have to let me know if you're more calm after you've used it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I will honestly say just that breathing exercise, I did it for 3 minutes. Even with the leaf blower, it calmed me.
Wow, that's good. You know, I want something that will help me go to sleep. And I don't mean go to sleep at the beginning of the night, because I can do that no problem. It's that I wake up in the middle of the night and then I start thinking, and I would love to listen to something that would put me to sleep. But most of the time when I'm listening to someone talking, I'm just listening to them, and it keeps me awake. So I don't know.
You know what? That alone, even the breathing thing, would help, because there's the sound of water running in the background, which I love. I love water running sounds, except it makes me want to go to the bathroom.
What do you think got me up in the first place?
I know, exactly. Yeah. But the breathing thing just instantly is like, I'm going to try that tonight if that happens. Because, I fall asleep really fast, but then... if I wake up, then I can't get back to sleep.
You know, I wear this Fitbit. I think I mentioned it. And it gives you a sleep score in the morning. Like,
we talked about this a couple weeks ago.
And then now I'm like trying to do my personal best. And then I'm so disappointed when I get down to like a fair score. I'm like, oh, darn it. You know, I knew it. Or I'm in the middle of the night. I wake up and think, oh, this Fitbit is judging me because it knows that I'm going to be up for another hour.
Isn't that funny? My Fitbit, my sentient Fitbit
is judging me. I don't think it really cares. I think it's judgy. And they want me to sign up so that I can compare it with other people, and I don't really want to do that.
Just what I need is to compare myself with others. Dear God.
I already feel badly enough. What's going on in DNA news, Julie?
Oh, a few interesting things. So Ancestry DNA did one of their notorious ethnicity updates this week.
Oh, okay.
Or last week, I guess. And it is being coined Scotland Gate.
Why?
Because everybody has more Scottish all of a sudden.
Oh.
And I definitely do. And I looked at, because, I manage like 50 kids. And if anybody has any British or Irish, they've added Scottish into it or something like that. Whereas mine is like primarily Scottish now. When it used to be primarily Irish. 5 years ago, when I first got my DNA back.
Yes.
Remember? And I took that as, I'm Irish. Remember?
Right,
and I dyed my hair red.
Yes.
Which is the dumbest thing ever. And and now the Scottish has overtaken the Irish, which is correct. I have both sides of my family has Irish Andersons.
That's interesting. I'm half
Scottish,
Irish, half Irish. So
you don't have any. Wait a minute. Yours went from you are half Irish, but it added 6% of Scottish in there.
Oh,
just for fun.
Do you watch the show Dark on Netflix?
No.
It's a German show, and it's really, really good. Ooh. There's 3 seasons of it, and it is, boy, no one does dark like the Germans. I'll tell you.
Well, the Germans are somewhat dark.
The whole reason I bring this up is because I thought of you when I was watching it, because there's a family tree, and they build it out on both sides of this as part of the plot line, and everyone somehow ends up being related in different ways, and that's part of the fun of the show.
Oh, cool.
It's about like time travel, and people go back in time and they have babies, and like, so it's, I just thought,
that sounds right up my alley.
I know, but it would totally confuse you. You'd be looking like, wait a minute. If she was born in 1960, how does she have a baby in 1920?
Well, that's the time-space continuum.
Yes,
quandary.
But anyway, they actually put the tree out there,
I love
and
that.
I was thinking about you. So it has nothing to do with DNA, the show,
but still, time travel is my next favorite thing.
It does have to do with how people are related to each other, and how you may not necessarily know, and then you find out. So, yeah, it's a really good show. I highly recommend it.
So Blaine Bettinger posted on his personal page, actually, not the group page, but he said Ancestry DNA updated their ethnicity estimates this week. There are new issues, a new Scotland problem, and a return to the old Scandinavian problem. I'm not aware of that one, but at least there is a continued effort to improve. The thing that always bugs me about ethnicity updates is that 99.9% of people ignore their ethnicity estimate or don't find it useful in their research, but the instant there's an update, all of a sudden they can't live without it. So true.
Well, I remember talking to you about this. I was kind of amazed that anybody was that fascinated by the percentage of what they were. It didn't make sense to me. I always thought of it more about how you use DNA to find, for your family tree.
Right.
Not necessarily where you're from, but like who.
Yes.
Because people move around.
Exactly. And that's why it changes all the time, because they're realizing that. And I still don't know. I've said before that it's really not, your ethnicity estimate is not really useful in genetic genealogy and searching for family, except for in broad strokes. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an example of that. One that just happened with a case this week for me, actually. I was I'm looking for this woman's, both of her parents. And on one side, I got to where, okay, I knew that one of her grandparents had to be one of these people, but who did he marry? Who I can, then one of their children would be one of her parents. And what I usually do is I just go sibling by sibling and look for their marriage. And then I see who they married. And then I immediately go and search for that name in the matches, just to see, which doesn't necessarily mean it's not in there. But if it is in there, it'll show up as in somebody's tree. But not always, because not many people have trees. Mm-hmm. So this particular name, I think it was like Pacala or something. And I said, well, that's not it. That's Italian. And I knew she wasn't Italian, and I plugged it in, and sure enough, some Pacalas came up. And come to find out, Pacala is a Finnish name. Finnish? Yes, I thought it sounded Italian.
Huh. Did you say I'm finished?
I'm finished with the Pacalas. It's Finnish, yes. And it sounds Italian or maybe Greek. I don't know.
So she's part of the finish line?
Yes. Oh, my God. We got to cross that finish line. And stop. You need to stop crossing the finish line.
I'm sorry. You feed me these things, Julie, and you expect me to be quiet,
I was waiting for you to do another one. With that sentence.
I reserve the right to do so.
I know you do. I do too, but I need to focus. And it turns out, and I looked at her DNA, and it turns out she doesn't indeed have a significant amount of Finland in her
ethnicity update.
Estimate update, all of the things that start with a vowel.
EEU.
Yes, the EEU. So that was very telling. And on that note, I want to go to another case that I've had for a while. Well, the company has had for a while. I'm not working on it anymore. I've actually talked about different aspects of this case several times before, but she has been wanting us to contact anyone who anyone has ever said could possibly be her birth father. And that's not how that works. Yeah. But there was this one line of cousins, and she thought that she looked the most like this group of brothers. And so that has to be one of the fathers, or that her father must be there. And she kept saying, well, just call them. Why can't you just call them? Well, because I don't call random people. Right. And finally I looked at it closer, and their name is very Italian. And they look very Italian. And that name does not appear in the DNA, which does not disqualify it completely. However, they are definitely at least half Italian, and she has 0 Italian. So that's a deal breaker right there, unless they're not at all Italian and nobody knew. But they look Italian. They're Italian, for heaven's sake.
I'm so bad at that. Like, I look at people and I think, oh, Italian, and I find out, oh no, they're Middle Eastern, or they're Greek, or.
Well, yeah, it's very hard to differentiate, I think.
Yes. When I want to profile someone ethnically, I would not be a good
You wouldn't be good
FBI
at it?
person or something.
Yeah, I don't know if I would either. Although apparently, you know what? I think people from Slavic countries, I can kind of tell if people are. I mean, not all of them, but I think there's a specific look to it.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
Maybe I just don't pay attention enough. Like the other day, I was sort of, I didn't realize it, but I was a witness to a crime in my neighborhood, in our neighborhood, Julie. And I didn't realize it was a crime at the time, but I found out later when I saw the police and that they had pulled this person over for something. And I had seen that car earlier, and they were like, could you describe it? I'm like, I don't know. It was a blue car. Like they're like, what make and model? And I don't know cars. I could not tell you a Chevy from a Ford, from an Audi, you know, I just don't know unless I'm looking at the back of it, you know.
Yeah.
I look at a car and go, oh, it's a blue car. I don't know, it's a sedan, I guess, you know. But anyway, same thing with ethnicity. I could not tell you unless they came up to me and said something, you know, really obviously in Italian, and even then I'd probably question it.
Yeah, no, I would never say that guy looked like he was Italian, especially in the melting pot that we live in.
Right.
It would just be like, well, he was dark complected and looked somewhat Mediterranean or possibly Hispanic.
Right.
You know, or Greek or Jewish. Or
so I don't know how helpful I was to the police officer.
What did he do?
They were actually stealing. There was an empty house, like someone had moved out of the house and it was going to be demolished. And they were going into the house and stealing, I guess, copper pipes. Yeah, but they had removed even the electric meters from the outside of the house. They had taken those. I mean, I didn't know there was such an aftermarket for this stuff.
There's a huge market for copper pipes. My dentist's office, it got to a point where patients had to get a key to go into the bathroom on the hall. And I said, why did this happen? They said, they keep coming in and stealing our copper.
That's so weird. I would never think of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, they had taken, there was a built-in air conditioner, like the kind that isn't in a window, but it's built into the side of the house, and they had taken that. I mean, they took so much stuff. The whole house had been cleaned out of stuff. And I guess, I mean, the house was going to be torn down anyway, but it wasn't theirs to take.
It wasn't theirs to take, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
So, and they were in a stolen car. So,
well, to boot.
The one I couldn't describe. It's blue. I think we should take a break, Julie.
All right, we shall.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
Exciting news.
Ooh, let's hear it.
Daughters of the American Revolution has begun to accept autosomal DNA and mitochondrial DNA, in addition to Y DNA, as evidence of lineage submitted with Daughters of the American Revolution membership applications within the first 3 generations. I don't know what that means. So the Daughters of the American Revolution staff genealogists will now consider Y DNA, autosomal, and mitochondrial evidence, along with the more traditional genealogical sources, during the verification of member-related applications. This change will primarily benefit adoptees and children of adoptees. The National Society has accepted traditional paternity and maternity tests for more than 20 years.
You're going to have to remind me who the DAR is.
I don't know. Actually, I do. They're like direct descendants of, I guess, the revolutionary.
Well, I mean, American Revolution,
yes.
right? That's from the 18th century.
Right. So from people who were there.
And there are people that still hang out, and that's the only thing they have in common?
Yes. Yes. I'm going to get in so much trouble. My friend Bonnie is in Daughters of the American Revolution, so she's not going to be happy with this conversation.
Oh, I know it just amazes me, you know?
Yeah, I don't really get it either. I mean, I like the historical aspect of it.
Yes.
But the exclusivity of because you're related to somebody is weird to me. And by the way, I think it's interesting because you can only join DAR if you can prove a bloodline descent. You have to be a bloodline descendant.
So you can't just be like someone who's really interested in the American Revolution and wants to, okay.
No. So if you're adopted, unless you can't prove that your biological family was part of the American Revolution, then you're not allowed in. However, whose adoption is public You know what I mean? So that there seems to be a glitch in the whole thing. And I think as an adoptee, that's weird to me because the importance of being blood related to somebody, to be involved in somebody, it cuts to the core of what it's like to be an adoptee.
Well, there's something also. I mean, I don't want to rag on the DAR and DNA and DNR or whatever. I just mean, there's a long tradition of clubs that have excluded people because they are not of a certain blood, right? Like the blue bloods, or even like to the royalty. Right? You know, you have to prove a line in order to be. It doesn't mean that you are worthy of
no, it just
leadership.
means that you literally have that blood.
Yes.
Which in the grand scheme of things is pretty petty.
Yes. I mean, again, it's great to join a club and have common interests and all that. So I do not want to, get down on the DAR, but.
Right.
But if I have to give a blood test in order to become part of a club, I don't think that's a club I want to be part of, personally.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah,
that's all.
I'm kind of with you on that. But I thought it was interesting. I just saw the headline, and then it started I was like, well, how do they even know that people are adopted? I mean, nobody knew I was adopted unless here's a story.
Oh, okay.
Here's a story for you. So when my dad got sick, he got very sick. He had a catastrophic stroke. And he had a lady friend that was not particularly fond of me. Mm-hmm. And when I got to the hospital after he had the stroke, he was in the ICU. And so there was I had to go through several sets of doors to get in there and screening. And as I was on my way to his room, somebody stopped me and said, you're Mr. Dixon's daughter. And I said, yes. And they said, can we ask you questions? And I'm like, oh, of course. And they said, well, so we spoke to the name of the woman.
The lady friend.
And she said that she doesn't know if he has an advance directive. She said, but we understand that you're adopted. And I said, yes. And they said, was this a legal adoption?
What?
And nobody has ever asked me that before. And it was really bothersome.
Well,
and
are you going to go arrest him in the hospital for illegally adopting me?
Well, no, it was because if I was not legally, I think that the lady friend had led them to believe that I was like a daughter.
I see.
To him.
You weren't his family because you were not blood. But I wasn't
his family, and because I'm not blood, and because she wanted control over.
I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
She thought that he was his common law.
And
she was his common law wife.
What's so interesting about this is, and I understand historically, you only want next of kin or family or whatever. But for instance, my stepfather, who was in his 80s, was recently in the hospital, and I had that thought, oh my gosh, if I had to go see him, I have no proof of any kind of relation to him. We do not share a last name, but he has been in my life since I was 16 years old. He is my stepdad.
Well, normally you don't have to have proof unless somebody gives them a reason to doubt that you are not who you say you are.
If I were to go up, I would say I'm his son because he's like a dad to me, Mm-hmm. Of course, he's family.
Of course. I mean, and the only time that would ever be an issue is if somebody set off an alarm.
Right. That's interesting. Isn't it funny how this little DAR brought us to this whole thing about blood and going to hospitals and a lot of people, I bet, have stories like this. We're like, well, what if I have to prove, that I'm related to somebody who is like family to me,
or is family to me,
or is family? Yeah.
I mean, I was literally the only person in the country at that time that was legally related to my father.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, before marriage was legal between gay people, right? If one person in the partnership was in a hospital, the other could not go in to visit. And if one of the family members, like a parent or a brother or sister, something like that, said no, You know, even if they had been together a long time and they were estranged, it's really shocking.
This is an argument that I've had so many times with people in trying to explain to them there's a difference between legal marriage and domestic partnerships.
Yes.
They think that because gay people were allowed to have legal domestic partnerships, that it afforded them the exact same rights as legal marriage, and it did not.
Yeah. And most people don't carry their marriage certificate or their domestic partnership certificate in their wallet, so that in case something happened, an accident, that they'd have to go and prove to the hospital.
Well, I think you would probably have to now, though.
Yeah, probably.
even if you're married, I bet there's still like people to be like, how do we know you're legally married?
Yeah, I'd like whip out my phone and say, look, here's pictures of my wedding.
Right. Here I am with a bouquet.
I've really gone out of my way to get into this stranger's hospital room.
It's really important.
I even photoshopped pictures of us together at a wedding.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my goodness. All because of the DAR.
All because of the DAR. This is a listener question that I got from Gina Rogers-Boucher. I think that's how you pronounce it. She's a new listener. And she said, "Hi, Julesy." I enjoyed that she called me Julesy.
That's cute.
Yes. Yes, I like it. I'm enjoying your podcast from the beginning on episode 40 or so. She is on episode 40 or so. I wonder how persistent and how many times you reach out to a biological family member before giving up. How do you confirm they are getting your messages? Can you give an example of a time where you had to be extremely persistent before getting a response?
It's a good question.
It is a good question. I get that. And that kind of goes back to that one client that just wanted me to call everybody, which is nothing I recommend at all.
Right.
Yes, I believe the persistence is important, especially if you have no proof that they are receiving your messages. For example, if you try message requesting them on Facebook, you can tell if they've seen it or not. So that is one sign that they're not interested. I would probably try one more time in another medium. Now, if you're sending a letter to somebody, which is what I usually recommend, I send it in a way that is trackable usually, so that I know it at least got delivered to that address.
Right.
Sometimes you can do signature required if you want to make sure that they get it, but that also sends up a flag that is something important. And if it's a secret that they want to keep from other household members, we want to be careful.
Right. They might be suspect, or they might, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been getting cards, like birthday cards and thank you cards, and putting the letter in that. So you can tell it's a greeting card. So it looks like, so it's something that is addressed specifically to them. Nobody else is going to open their greeting card. And plus, they might be more apt to wonder what's inside.
And you address it by hand so that it's not like some computer label. Because I've gotten things that look like they are an invitation or a card, but I can tell that the font they use is like this blue color that looks like handwriting.
Yes,
but
that looks like no. Yo, I do. I do little curly cues and then little heart dots on the eyes.
Okay.
I don't.
I was going to say maybe you've tried to contact me, Julie, and I've just thrown it in the trash.
Maybe. In closing, I would say once you confirm that particular person has received your message, persistence is one thing, hounding is another thing. I would probably move on to another family member. We don't want to hound anyone, and we certainly don't want anybody in our lives that don't want us in their lives.
Right.
But we want to make sure that they have all the information they need to be informed of the situation.
That's a good answer, Julie.
Thank you.
Let's take a break.
All right.
Thank you for listening to CutOff Genes with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast. Now, back to the program. Hey, Julie, I wanted to mention before we get to our story time that right after we recorded the last podcast, and you had talked about E. Jean Carroll, is that her name? The woman that was suing the president for
defamation.
She was groped or something in the.
She was raped.
Was it Lord and Taylor?
No, it was Bergdorf Goodman.
That's right.
she's suing him. Apparently she can't sue him for rape, but she can sue him for defamation because he said he's never met that woman, and he clearly has met that woman.
I
So
see.
she's getting him that way.
Well,
supposedly.
right after we recorded it, it was like a day or two later, I saw it in the news.
Yeah, they were apparently it got punted in some kind of strategy, and apparently now the U.S. government is representing the president in that 20-year-old defamation case.
So basically, our tax dollars are going to pay to defend him against E.
That's how it appears. I don't think it'll come to fruition before he's out of office anyway.
Yeah, we know that the truth is in her genes. So.
And on her genes.
And on her genes. Let's not talk anymore about it. I just remembered that it came up and that I wanted to bring it up because I saw it right after we recorded it.
Yes.
But now I think it's time for story time.
Okay, it is time for story time. It's time for part 2 of Jennifer Hodge Moniello's Epic Odyssey. When last we spoke to Jen, so she was telling the story of how she was an NPE and she'd been looking for her father, and she knew he had been in Florida at a specific time, and her mother worked in a Waffle House, and she had finally found close enough family to test. And so now they're testing.
Great. Let's have a listen to part 2.
How was she about taking it in the first place? Did she think there was a possibility it was her dad, or did she just think that she would come up as a cousin too?
Well, that was the 2 possibilities.
Yes.
I said, you're either going to be a cousin or a half sibling.
Okay. So she knew the possibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And all the cousins knew how their fathers were.
Okay. Okay.
And they were basically lining up going, I'll wait for my kid.
Love it. Okay.
Which was the best of all possible scenarios,
Yes.
considering what I had braced myself for.
Absolutely. Good that you braced yourself for that too, though.
Right.
Yeah.
So Linda does the kit, and Linda is this very, very sweet, very soft-spoken person. So even though I think she may have been a little hesitant, she wanted to help.
Mm-hmm.
And, but she would kind of approach questions like, now, when this kit comes back, what would I be looking for? So, and I kind of talked her through, this is how you allow me to see your kit.
Right.
And I'm happy to explain everything to you.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking for something, either you're going to have lower central Morgans like our cousin in the 700s, or you're going to have higher central Morgans in the 16, 17, 1800s.
Right.
And that means you're a half sibling. So while we're waiting for that kit to process, interestingly enough, our other sister, Loretta, her son had done a 23andMe kit and hadn't told anybody. He doesn't even know what's going on with his mother and his aunt. He just did a kit to do a kit.
Right.
Well, 23andMe estimates relationships for you. They're not always accurate.
Yeah.
So while we're waiting for Linda's kit to process, Loretta calls me and says, Brandon did a kit and we're a little confused, and I'll admit we're hill people, so we're suspicious of everything.
Wait,
but
did she literally call herself hill people?
Yes.
I love it. Okay.
And she says, but it says you're his grandmother.
Okay. Sure.
And also keep in mind, Loretta is only 3 months older than I am.
Okay.
So grandparent is definitely not in the realm of possibility.
So they went to grandparent as opposed to aunt or half aunt.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. And he matches me probably because we're probably a little bit related to his father.
Oh, okay.
He matches me almost as the full aunt. He's 1360 Central Morgans.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it wasn't even a half relationship.
Yeah. Okay.
So I explained to her, they estimate the relationship, not always accurately, but we share enough DNA to also be aunt and nephew. So that kind of clinched it. It seemed like Linda's kid at that point was superfluous.
Yeah. How much later did it come in, though?
A couple weeks.
Okay.
But meanwhile, Loretta sends me these gifts of like opening gifts on Christmas. She's thrilled. She's like, welcome to the family.
Oh.
It was a wonderful reception.
Great.
Linda, like I said, much more quiet and soft-spoken. And she's like, well, while we're waiting for the results of this kit, do you want to tell me about yourself? Can I tell you about us? And I said, well, actually, can you tell me about Bill?
Yeah.
I was like, what did he do? What did he do for a living? And she said, oh, well, he was a manager of a Waffle House.
No. Stop.
And so we have said the next time we get together, we have to find a Waffle House sign and have a picture of the three of us taken underneath it.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I did not see that coming. I should have.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are a lot and my husband, he's like, nothing good ever happens in a Waffle House.
Oh my gosh. Now, have you confirmed that it was indeed he managed the Waffle House that your mother worked in?
Yeah.
Okay.
And my mom still denies remembering him specifically. Even though he had a lot of he was missing a thumb.
Oh, that's specific.
When I went to go visit my family, I texted her and said, do you remember the manager of the Waffle House who was missing a thumb? And she says, no, why, are you related to him? I said, oh, Mom. Yeah, I love my mother, but sometimes you just got to take her as she is. And my Uncle Tommy, my father's brother, remembers, he quote, that pretty little waitress at the Waffle House.
Oh, well, that's
and my
nice.
mom's a tiny little thing. She's only 5 foot, so he remembers that pretty little waitress.
Yep.
And when Tommy met me, he looked at me and he says, "Oh, you just look right like Bill."
Oh, wow.
You don't and I mean, I think this is true for me, and I hope it's true for other people. You don't realize what a space it fills in you to actually look like somebody.
Absolutely.
You don't even realize that space was empty until you have pictures and go, oh my God, there are my eyes. There's my jawline.
Yep.
They were honestly surprised a boy didn't show up on their doorstep, because Bill had always talked about also having another son. So no one was surprised by me per se. They were just surprised I was a girl.
Okay. Well, he may still be out there, so there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of our DNA is out there now. It's everywhere it can possibly be.
Yep. And it's the gift that keeps on giving.
It is. It is.
Okay, so let's get to the next part of what you did with this information, because this is pretty groundbreaking.
Yes.
Okay.
I almost forgot that's why we're here.
That's right. No, I love the backstory, though. That's great. That's very important. So tell us what happened next.
So I wanted to amend my birth certificate. This family has been warm and welcoming, and I will say my father of record, the Weisenbakers, none of my aunts ever contacted me. I'm only friends with family. I only still talk to one of his 7 children, but the Hodges feel like family.
Right.
And I wanted to not only honor that by taking their name, but it felt important to my identity that my documents synced with that.
Yeah.
Using the name Weisenbaker felt like playing dress up in somebody else's skin. So I started researching how to amend my birth certificate. I felt like I had plenty of DNA proof. And I contacted about 6 attorneys in Connecticut, from Stamford to Hartford. And they all said it can't be done.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
There wasn't anyone that would touch it.
Interesting.
If you ask anyone from my mother to my husband, telling me something can't be done is like a challenge to do it.
Oh my gosh, we're the same
What it means, What it means to me is it hasn't been done yet.
Right.
There isn't anything in Connecticut law that I could see that specifically said it couldn't be done. There was no law excluding what I wanted to do.
Right.
Which to me then meant I had to find the laws with the loopholes that would allow it. If there was no legislative law, then I started reading case law, see if there were cases that came before mine
Right.
that had at least some of the same information that could be used to justify my case.
Right. By yourself?
Me and, Google Law School.
Atta girl. Okay.
The last attorney I spoke to, I said, if I did all the research myself, could you at least check my math? And they were like, I don't think you'll find an attorney that will do that.
Wow.
I said, all right, all I have to lose is the money that I spend to file my petition. The first law I found was that in Connecticut legislative law, it states that if the putative father is deceased, anyone with an interest in the child's birth certificate can file on their behalf.
Okay.
Well, I would say I have an interest in my own birth certificate.
I would say so.
And thankfully, the judge agreed with me.
Nice.
So I filed this in February.
Okay.
And I went in then with the intention of just showing how ancestry DNA and GEDmatch is starting to be used in law enforcement.
Yes.
And that, and I printed out CC Moore's blog where she talks about X matches, how women who share the same X share the same father because he only has the one X to pass down to each daughter.
Right.
And my sisters and I all shared the same X. I brought in DNA from my father of record's daughter to prove that we shared no DNA. So I brought in all the DNA evidence. And he decided that he wanted to hear from my mother that she was not married to my father at the time I was born, because if the couple's married, he was legally the father. Although I did have in my hat, if I needed it, I found case law, and I can't cite it right now because I don't have it in front of me. I had found case law that said if there's DNA evidence, otherwise that should not be the defining rule.
Okay, great.
To establish paternity.
Right. So you had that in your back pocket. Anyway.
Right.
Right.
Oh, backtrack a little bit. So this was February. We trying to figure out when to get my mom to come down, and then COVID hit. And then we didn't have another hearing until June. And that was all done by Zoom.
Right.
And by then, I took the socially isolated time to hone my argument. Because with all the spare time in my hands, I started thinking of all the arguments he's going to throw back at me about why just the DNA isn't enough.
Yeah.
And why, if it's ancestry DNA, there is no chain of evidence.
Okay.
So, because, when you do a paternity test, you're kind of going somewhere and everybody's signing off that this is the person's DNA.
Right.
So then my sister sent me a copy of her birth certificate to prove that she was, we were born in the same city at roughly the same time. Mm-hmm. She sent me a notarized letter saying that her father was the manager of the Waffle House. And she noted that that was her kit number, that she had done the kit on such and such a date and received the results on such and such a date. So I had all that notarized. And then I started going through the case law to kind of hone my argument. The two cases I cited was one that specifically said that with the advancements of genetic testing, we've eliminated the proof problem.
Right.
And that Connecticut law has already changed twice to accommodate advances in genetic testing. So I wanted to say that there is no legal reason that Connecticut law doesn't advance with the science. It was Hayes v. Smith. And the judge agreed. That says the court agrees that the advancements in genetic testing support the theory that direct DNA testing of the putative father is not required in cases such as this. So he didn't need a direct sample. And then there was another one. I think it's Locke v. Welch, which established that they used a grandmother's DNA test to establish the family because the father was deceased.
Right.
So in case law, they had already used avuncular testing because they didn't have anything else.
Right. So now, was this all, did you argue this actually in directly with the judge, or was this all in a petition that he just read and rendered his decision?
I presented some of the argument via our Zoom meeting.
Okay.
But then he said, if I had more evidence, because I didn't know how to present the all the DNA evidence, all the printouts I had, all the notarized statements via Zoom.
Yeah.
Do I hold it up to the camera and say, look here?
Right.
So he said if I had more evidence I wanted to present, I could make him a little packet. He would hold off on his ruling, and I could drop it off at the probate court.
Oh, cool.
Because in Connecticut, probate court is what handles these things.
I was going to say, that's probate, huh? Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
So I wrote up my closing argument. I made notes on all the DNA because I wasn't there to present it. So I gave him the green CM chart.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, if you notice here, big arrows.
Right.
This is the amount of CMs that I share with my two sisters and my uncle. And they don't fit into these other estimated relationships because.
Right. Right.
And I went down the line.
Oh, so great.
So I gave him a whole list of the evidence and what it meant and how, the context of it. And then I gave him my closing argument. And he left me on pins and needles for a month.
A month?
A month.
Horrible.
But I'm going to say he's a very conscientious judge. He was cognizant of the fact that he was making case law.
Yeah, he was setting the precedent, right? Or you were.
So, yeah. I'm not sure how that works, whether the judge who rules is making the precedent, but...
Well, it wouldn't be set if you hadn't presented it, so...
True.
Yeah.
All right. We'll go with that.
And you did this without a lawyer. You go.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
What is there to lose? They say no. Nothing gets taken away from you. You just don't get something.
Right.
So, but yeah, he's a very conscientious judge. And he had mentioned in one of our court dates that he had discussed the case with some of his colleagues. So I know it was making the right decision was important to him.
Awesome.
And I actually got my decree on my birthday.
Oh.
3 years after I got my results.
I got chills just now.
And it said that he grants the petitioner's request that Billy Ray Hodge is my father and that I am allowed to change my name to Jennifer Hodge.
Which you could have done anyway, but this was to change your birth certificate, right?
Right. I could have
amend your birth certificate.
Gotten a name change.
Yeah.
But anytime someone wanted my maiden name, my passport still says Weisenbaker.
Right.
It would have felt wrong.
Right. Wow.
So I got my birth certificate last week.
Oh, so cool.
I put the rush on it. I paid the extra to have Florida rush it.
Sure.
And I am legally allowed to call myself Jennifer Hodge now. And my sisters all sent me welcome to the family messages.
Aww.
And it just my father was a very interesting person. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say I have a lot of his personality because he was tenacious.
Uh-huh.
And I found out from my sisters he was actually thrown out of the house when he was 12. And he was a self-taught mechanic. Which is kind of how he lost his thumb. He was a smart guy. He wasn't a nice guy. You don't always find all sunshine and rainbows in your family tree.
Absolutely.
But he was interesting, and I have that history now. And my name reflects that.
Yep. And you had qualities, obviously, that both of you possessed, such as the tenacity. Well, Jen, thank you so much for taking us full circle with this. What a terrific story.
Thank you for finding it interesting enough.
Oh, absolutely. You kidding me? This is the exact thing that we find interesting at CutOff Genes.
Oh, if I could just, if anyone else is thinking of doing the same thing, can I just note that the judge made very specific conditions about mine?
Yes.
Because both putative and father of record were deceased.
Okay.
And there was no inheritance. So I wasn't doing this for an estate.
Right.
Which he noted in his 9-page opinion.
Okay.
So I don't know if that will influence anybody else's journey, but it might be taken in consideration if they use my case for themselves.
Wow, really good point. That's interesting. Yeah. It's funny because I can't think of anybody except for possibly royalty that would do that, for anything other than truth. But I see the point. So, Jen, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
You're officially Jennifer Hodge now. Yay. Cool. I love that. That's such a great story. I'm really glad she decided to talk to us. And I just really admire that kind of tenacity. Yeah.
I hope everybody else enjoyed it. I know they always do. There's always good discussion and discourse on the podcast Facebook page. So
there is.
Anyway, I guess we're going out of here. And in that case, I am Richard Castle, and I have a website, richardcastle.com. Or you can follow me on the Twitter at Castle Songs.
And I am Julie Dixon Jackson. Follow me on the Twitter at Jules Jackson with 2 O's. Follow the podcast at CutOff Genes Pod. Join the Facebook group CutOff Genes Podcast, or send me an email, Jules Jackson with 2 O's at cutoffgenes.com. And also reminders for our Patreon listeners, the last Sunday of the month at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I will be doing a Facebook AMA. I guess it's in one of the rooms there. We did it once before.
Cool.
Whoever is one of our patrons, make sure you join the group. And if you can, join us and we can have a Zoom type conversation.
How fun. They get to hear you live. Say what, Julie?
The truth is in your genes.